right.
How about roll call then?
All right. So let me just get my agenda up here. And we are good to go with Chair Gary Delvaux.
Here.
Vice Chair Matt Schuler. Got a wave? Yep. Okay. Alderperson Barbara Dorf.
Here.
And we have Debbie Dean.
Here.
Jim Blumrick.
Here.
Kathy Hinkfus.
Here.
And Melanie Parma.
Here.
All right, excellent. So the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda itself. Motion to approve, please.
So move, Bloomreich.
Second.
The motion and a second. Jim Barb.
There.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Minutes from March 24th.
Move to approve, Bloomreich.
Second. Schuler.
Who was second, please?
Schuler.
Okay. Motion, Jim, and second by Matt to approve the minutes from our March 24th meeting. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. The first thing, a regular order of business was the selection, something that we talked about a little bit last meeting, selection members to serve in the various subcommittees. I didn't hear anybody make suggestions for changes. So unless I hear what how the subcommittees are set up, and kind of related to that, if a subcommittee is going to meet and it doesn't look like they have a quorum, please contact me, and if I'm available, I'll definitely like to attend. So we can keep the subcommittees moving. I would imagine the revolving loan committee's got quite a bit of things going on, Matt, or what's that group? Didn't you meet yesterday, Matt? All right. Anyway.
Yeah, we did meet yesterday, Gary, and we did create a pandemic relief fund
Good.
with about $100,000 of CDBG money. So that is in place and underway and getting started now, and will be available to essentially small businesses that are physically located in Green Bay. And that's depending on the size of the business, loans of up to either $5,000 or loans of up to $10,000.
Excellent.
Certainly there will be more discussion going on there and looking for additional sources of funding as well, with the potential that we could add to that fund. And then yesterday also the revolving loan fund went ahead and, while this may simple, had a business that was coming forward, White Dog Cafe down on Broadway, that was looking to acquire the land next to them and expand and built an outdoor patio. That business had just been sold from, say, the parents to their daughter and a business partner. So the business kind of stays in the same family, but moves to the next generation, and they're looking to expand and do more things. So even in the midst of this, there are still downtown businesses that are looking to expand and, do some great new things in the community.
Excellent. Thanks for that update. I appreciate it very much. All right. And if somebody does come up with, they want some changes as far as being on a different subcommittee, whatever, contact me and we can see what we can do. But as of right now, we're going to go with what's been proposed, which is really basically the same lineup as we had last year. But like I said, if someone's got ideas for different assignments, please let me know. Number two. Yes.
Chair, I think probably it would be appropriate just maybe to take a motion and second and vote just to approve these subcommittees.
Okay, good idea.
Move to approve Dorf.
Second, Kathy.
Okay, Alder Dorf and Kathy are making motions to approve the assignments for the subcommittees. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Number two, consideration of possible action on First Amendment to Development Agreement 18-04 Whitney Park Townhouses, Phase 4, with Greenway Real Estate Investments for a project at 827 Cherry Street, 205 North Van Buren, 207 North Van Buren, 213 North Van Buren, 215 North Van Buren, 219 North Van Buren, and 212 North Van Buren Street, tax parcels 10-71, 10-72, 10-72A, 10-72B, 10-72C, 10-41, and 10-41A. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Mouthful, right? A lot of parcels, but that's what happens when you're doing redevelopment in a small neighborhood here. So we entered RDA in the city, entered into a development agreement back in 2018. That was for, we'll call it phase 4 of the Whitney Park townhomes, working with GB Real Estate Investments, manager Garrett Bader. He's done a lot of work in the Whitney Park neighborhood. And really, phase 1, 2, and 3 further north in Van Buren. This one started down a little further south at the corner of Van Buren and Pine Street. I'm sorry, Cherry Street, and has worked its way northward. And right now, that initial agreement back in 2018 contemplated future phases of the development. And what we would like to do is make an amendment to that development agreement to allow for the construction of 5 additional owner-occupied units, again, in line with what's been constructed there. So, if you've seen the project out there, it's been a great product for the city. We're very excited about it. And this would, continue to add some additional structures further to the north. What the amendment does is really what we look at initially. The property, if you add in the additional parcels, has an aggregate value of about $274,000. Upon completion of the project, these 9 units at approximately $1.8 million. That's assuming just around $200,000 a unit. They've been selling a little bit above that, but that's what we're using for our calculations and our estimations here. And so with that, they have been included in the Whitney Park tax increment district. And we're recommending continuing the incentive that was provided in the original agreement, which is a pay-go reimbursement of 80%. What we would do then is propose raising the cap up to $274,500. That really much stays in line with the proportion that was provided beforehand. So with that, you've gotten a copy of the proposed amendment language in your packet, along with and staff would be recommending approval of this agreement. I believe Mr. Bader is available on telephone if you have specific questions for him. But with that, we would recommend moving approval and are really excited to continue some further development in that Whitney Park neighborhood.
And this is Matt Schuler. Just a quick question on this project is 1 block to the south. Whitney Park townhomes are, but on the other side of the street?
Correct. So it's between south of Pine, north of Cherry, on the west side of Van Buren.
Okay. And then looking then across the street from where these will go in will be the project that's going on at Whitney Park, at Whitney School.
That is correct. Yep.
Correct. Okay.
Those will be done by Milwaukee View. And there's some, I think maybe 6 units up right now. And those are, Milwaukee View's units.
Okay. And so basically both sides of that block of Van Buren now would have new projects on both sides of the street.
That is correct.
Okay. And are these then more or less similar in design to the project that Garrett has already done just 1 block to the north of there?
So these will be different in design. I think they're a little bit more modern take. If you give me a second, I can pull up. I think I have a photo of what the latest units have looked like. I would say they're a little bit more modern in their designs. And so let's see if I can pull that up here. I think I've got it in here. Give me 1 second and I'll pull it up. But they're a little bit more modern than the ones further north on Van Buren.
Okay. But similar in properties?
Similar in value and actually probably higher. Things have been going really well in that neighborhood and values have been appreciating. I think initially, and Mr. Bader could probably answer this better than I, some of the first units in the first phases, sold for 130, 140, 150. I think the latest ones that have sold, part of the new ones on towards Cherry Street, have all sold for over $200,000.
Wow.
Great.
Now, of course, it's a pay goal, which we all like. That's a good thing.
Yes, correct. So this would be a continuation of the PAYGO incentive that was presented before, and with that, we're just increasing the cap proportionally to what it was before, up to that $274,000.
Well, given that, Kevin, that, hey, this is all being done proportionally. We've got a history, the city does with Garrett, or quote unquote, this developer. And I think the very successful projects that he's pulled off, I'd make the motion, to go ahead and approve this first amendment to the development agreement.
I would agree, Matt. I'll second that. Kathy Hinkes.
Okay, there's a motion by Matt, second by Kathy. Any other comments or questions?
I guess if you could share, were you able to share those? I didn't see the images.
Yep, I'm still pulling through. I didn't have them. I thought I had them in one spot, but give me one second. If you want to make a motion to open the floor, I believe the developer is here and he can correct me maybe on the plans. That'll buy me a minute just to pull those open.
Move to open the floor.
Yeah.
By
Second.
Dorf.
Olderdorf, and a second by
Karma.
Melanie. Okay, all in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Floor is open.
Good afternoon.
So-
Good afternoon, all my Hollywood Squares friends. How are you?
Great.
There he is down there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for hearing the request again. Kevin and Gary both individually hit them completely. Matt, to your question, this would be essentially identical to the two new buildings that were put up last year. So right at the corner of Cherry and Van Buren, what you see there is what you get going forward.
Okay.
Kevin, you're working? Uh-oh.
He's on mute. He's working hard.
Yes, I am. I'll be back in 1 second.
All right.
Well, I mean, for me, I'd appreciate to see them, but hearing from Garrett that they're going to be the same as the latest ones that they've done, that helps give us a visual and understanding of what's going up there, and we know the quality of that work.
Garrett, curiosity more than anything, it'd be seeing quite a bit of interest already.
Yeah, so what's driving this request today is two new buyers that have come forward, and we're very close to executing agreements, all of us. So that would be two buyers fit. So one new building, 2 units in the building. And then the ability to plan for another 3 going forward, probably next year after that.
Excellent. Very encouraging.
Congrats, Garrett.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's been fun, as Matt was alluding to there, where you now have your bookending both sides of the street, and you see the new development on both sides. It's starting to feel really good.
Good. We have quite a few things on the agenda, Kev, so I may call for the vote.
We have to go back to regular order, so I move we go
yes,
back to regular order.
Yep, Alderdorf, you're right.
Alderdorf.
Second.
Second by Melanie. All in favor, saying aye. We're back to regular order of business. And actually, we should probably redo those motions then. That was Matt.
Yeah, I'll make the motion again to, go ahead with approval of the first amendment to the development agreement 1804 townhouses.
And I'll second that.
And a second by Kathy. Motion by Matt. Any other questions or comments? If not, we shall vote. All those in favor, saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Kev. We have a pretty big agenda, so I'm going to keep on rolling, okay?
Yep, not a problem.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye, Garrett.
Bye, Garrett. Number 3, consideration of possible action on obligations of developer to development agreement 19-04 TWG2 at the rail yard at 419 Donald Driver Way, tax parcel 5-1772. I would imagine that's Kev again, huh?
That is. So what I'd like to do is just discuss a little bit project. This is a project with TWG Development. Back at the end of last year, the city RDA had a development agreement with TWG for another mixed use, though primarily residential project at the rail yard. At the time, right, we had a really boring name, so we just called it TWG2 because it was just moving very quickly.
Yes.
But with that, it's going to be moving forward, and it's going to be called the Fort at the rail yard, which I think, with respect to the history and homage of what that area used to be back in, some of the early European settlement. So with that, the development agreement was approved. This is a quite large project, 225 of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 5 stories, lots of amenities, some retail on Broadway. And with that, we have in the packet the development agreement, some approvals in terms of the concept plan, construction document, budget. And so those were included in your packet for approval. I can go through, and if you'd like to just show a little bit, we do have a representative from the developer, both Michael Taft, who's been managing this project, and J.B. Curry, who's the principal, available to answer any questions and provide additional details if you so desire. I think just for the interest of those who are on board, I'll just bring up real quickly, I think what people want to see, and that is, really kind of looking at, the preliminary concept plan and development piece. So I'm going to pull those up. Right. And share that. And so I think you should be able to see on your screen concept plan. So this really just, kind of shows out the preliminary or kind of the finalized now layout. We're dealing with 2 entities here, the Redevelopment Authority and the governing development agreement. And then also we've been working, through planning and the planned unit development that is in there that has certain stipulations, again, for design requirements. We really wanted to make sure, put an emphasis that this area gets developed, to urban standards. Really want to make this feel like a great urban neighborhood. So very small, tight setbacks, emphasis on quality materials and facades, and really making sure that we're building something to last here into the future. So this again, we'll show the layout of the facility itself. And going through, these aren't in their, first floor basically has the retail up along Broadway, some in-house things in terms of a leasing office, mechanical storage areas, some community space along Kellogg. This is area that we talked about, in the future, perhaps this could be converted to commercial space. We want to be sensitive to the demand in the area and not overbuild. So it's designed with the way that it's community space now, but could be converted in the future. And then back on Donald Driver, which is more residential, those are all residential units in that area. And then in terms of just the overall layout and scope, this is where we're going. And here's standing on the corner of Broadway and Kellogg, looking towards the northeast. So really, I think, making some great improvements since the original preliminary concept drawings and renderings that have come out, great use of texture and then different types of materials, using the awning or cantilevered space in the front to provide some sheltered area for dining and retail. and really, I think, fitting in well and mixing with the historical area of this spot, really a nod to the future and how we're doing some things today. So I'm not going to go through everything. I know we have a representative, as I mentioned, from TWG here. Any questions about details on things? But with that, we're very excited about this project. Just a few minor cleanup details to do, but we are recommending approval of the documents that were presented before you today.
Would you like to hear from the developer?
Yes, please. Make a motion to open up the floor.
Excellent. Motion by Mel to open the floor, and second by Barb, Alder. I'm sorry.
Okay, second.
Yeah, I thought so. All those in favor, sing by saying aye.
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 Excellent. The meeting's open. Mr. Developer, give us a little more info.
Great. Well, my name is Michael Taft. I'm here in the Indianapolis headquarters of TWG. Well, my house is what that is right now.
Right.
But so I'm here on behalf of TWG representing this second project in the rail yard development. I believe Kevin will be kind of steering the images, so I might have to prompt him once in a while, but generally speaking, we kind of came before you back last fall, as Kevin mentioned. At that moment, we are already underway on the Broadway lofts, which are just to the north. Those are still going very well. I hope that you've driven by recently.
Yes.
You can really start to see what they'll really feel like, and the townhomes and the apartments both looking great. So we're excited to be in Green Bay and excited to kind of walk this final project towards getting shells in the ground. Kevin, I don't know, do you have the actual slides prepared, or should I just?
Yeah, so I've got the slide deck. I've got all the renderings if you want to go through, and then I also have all of the construction documents with the floor layouts. I think probably primary concern might be dealing with the architectural things. So I don't know if you want to talk about and just go through the renderings first.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to recap briefly, this is 225 units with 4,600 square feet of retail space. You can see in this rendering, the retail space is primarily shifted towards Broadway, kind of have full height storefront glass there, as well as kind of a corner element that looks pretty different from the rest of the building. And the intention there was to mirror some of the design cues of the existing buildings of the Larson Canning kind of facility. So there's some cues there of that industrial history, but then it ties back into the more modern element of, we kind of call them the portals or the frames that are used there to differentiate and give kind of a rhythm to the facade. And so that's kind of the focus of the Broadway frontage, is that commercial feel. And with retail spaces, you can see right on the corner, that retail space is bumped up. So they're actually not units on that second floor where there's gray brick. That is actually a lofted ceiling. So that retail space specifically will have 26-foot ceilings. And then the retail spaces to the left will have 15-foot ceilings. So still pretty generous. And so we're really excited about what those spaces will feel like, in addition to kind of the outdoor seating. You can see the kind of the odd thing hanging down from the corner that looks kind of like a banner that's blue, a gradient with blue, and yeah, there you go. That's kind of a placeholder for some public art that we'll be working further with the Public Arts Commission and doing an RFP process more while we get into construction. A great job of both for that piece and for murals on other parts of the building, engaging with the local community and sending people up to do interviews and actually making sure the artwork in the end is rooted in what the community wants to see there. So we're excited for that as a spot to kind of have a little bit flair on the corner of the building. And you'll hear more about that later. Moving on to Kellogg. I guess, yeah, here's a couple of details you can see. We can probably just jump past those. Yeah, moving on to Kellogg, you can see, as Kevin mentioned, we have storefront glass that continues along there, and that is where our leasing office, co-working space, community room, there's a kind of community kitchen in there, and where I think as well of our gym is all along Kellogg there, and it's specifically adapted so that the HVAC systems and fire code are all easily transferable to kind of a commercial use, so that if we did want to flip the switch and make it leased commercial space in the future, it wouldn't be horribly difficult. And because this is an opportunity zone, we know that we're going to own this property for at least 10 years. And so we really have a vested interest in making sure that we can have the building react to the market needs. And I think this is a really great way to do that. And then I think the next slides would be the rooftop deck, which is,
There it is.
yeah, well,
Yep.
the rooftop deck is just a really great feature. It has obviously views of the river. We will have gas heaters out there, which will hopefully make it a little bit more 3 seasons than your typical outdoor space in Green Bay. They also will have either garage doors or some sort of easily foldable door system that opens into a large community kitchen that's kind of an entertaining space that's kind of straight ahead in that rendering. And so that will be a pretty amazing space to host a Super Bowl party or host any kind of entertainment where you can kind of flow in and off the deck as the weather allows and as the party wants to. But so that's just an exciting amenity. And then in that same view, you can see a really neat way that we managed to fit in essentially walk-up stoops and kind of almost a Brooklyn brownstone kind of feel, in that you can walk straight up to your front door of your apartment unit. Typically, a modern apartment building limits you to going in one of 2 or 3 central entrances, going down your long corridor, and then going in your little interior unit door. And this still gives that option. We do have an interior corridor, but this also gives people the ability to just walk straight out their front door and go on a walk. And I think that makes it a lot more engaging of a neighbor for the condos across the street and for the whole community. It also breaks up a facade in a unique way. So I'm really happy with that design element. And then if we want to jump back to the mural piece on the end there. And then so on this tail, you can see there, kind of looks like a train. It's a stock image that I believe the architect selected, but that is a similar place where we're going to have a large 50-foot that will be commissioned and will be extremely expensive. But it's, I think it will look really good. And we have a few partners here in Indianapolis we work with very frequently. And then hopefully we'll find some artists in Green Bay as well that can contribute to that. So we're really excited for that kind of the aha moment of when somebody is walking around the rail yard and they walk by that area and they see a huge, beautiful mural there on the edge of the building. And I believe that's a stair tower. So it's that kind of area of the building would likely be one of the least attractive areas on a typical building. And so I think we've done a really good job of taking what is typically not a gray area and maximizing that space. And then, yeah, I think that is the primary things that come for the renderings. I mean, you can see another detail of just the really great looking corner and kind of some of the detailed masonry work that we kind of dialed up a notch. You'll notice on the budget, this building is actually about $1 million more expensive than it was than we presented it in the fall. I think that's good for you guys. But we've made it work, and I think we've really pushed that to meet the PUD in every way. And make it a really beautiful building. And I think that, it's a really successful project.
Michael, could you just talk real briefly? I brought up this slide just to talk about this opening here and some of the challenges, that we've dealt with and kind of gone back and forth, and what this serves and how we're going to address this.
Yeah. So one of the major issues of modern development is really it's hard to do without doing a pretty large scale project, and typically kind of the 200 unit range. And because of efficiencies of scale, the significant downside to some of those projects is that it's easy to lose some of the natural walkable breaking in buildings and permeability of blocks. There's all kinds of urban planning terms for that. But really the idea is you don't want to hit a building and not know how to get around it or get shifted off to the side. And you want people to be able to easily flow in and out of the campus and have a flexibility there. So because of the challenges of the site, the building kind of did ultimately lend itself to this big U shape, which primarily hides surface parking, which is amazing, but also does kind of threaten the navigability of the site. So we did put in this first floor breezeway that essentially functions as an easy way for people to get between multiple buildings within the rail yard. So if you were in the existing building to the north or the existing building to the south and traversing between different areas of the campus, walking over to Elmore, down to Titletown, or to the brewery, all of that would be served by this kind of breezeway corridor rather than being blocked off by this large barrier that you would have to kind of jog around. So that's the idea of that space.
So Michael, is there any public parking in that center section?
There would be some parking for the retail spaces. And there is not kind of explicitly public parking. I think that we actually did a parking analysis of all the parking available on Broadway and nearby side streets. And it seemed like the utilization is likely extremely low right now on those existing street spots, as well as at the park along the river. There's seems to be a lot of parking. And so we've worked pretty closely with base companies to kind of make sure that we're planning ahead and collaborating to make sure that there's enough parking for all the uses on the site.
So in your presentation, you mentioned 4,600 square feet of retail, and our document says 7,000 of first floor retail. I believe that was in the development agreement. Is that what you're referring to? On the background for our agenda item, it mentions 7,000 square feet. Just curious about the difference.
Yeah, so that was primarily, we did originally design for 7,000 square feet. The main thing that caused that change was there is basically where there's interior bike parking that is basically right behind the current retail. We really wanted to encourage bicycle usage for residents and make sure we had enough space for those. So we added an extremely large room to that, and that at the same time we were looking at the way that the retail functioned and what tenants look for, and essentially was this really long, deep retail space in that portion to the right. So that ended up being eliminated for an interior bike room. So that was reduced it from 7,000 to 4,600. Yeah.
Melanie, any thoughts from an architectural point of view?
Yeah, it's really nice. I really like it. I think, it's interesting if we compare this to, if we can think back to our last meeting and what we looked at, and not, that there was specifically, anything wrong, but the comments that I made from the last development that we were looking at was about, all the use of metal panel and masonry below, which they've done here. There's a nice mix of materials. That previous one we saw, again, not to that, but we talked about, it was a lot of metal panel and maybe just different colored metal panel, where here they're using different materials. They're being very sensitive to what's happening elsewhere in the adjacency of the property. I like how they have that corner piece that is different, how it speaks to the language of the other buildings, of the cannery, warehouse spaces. I mean, it's really nice. It's very impressive. I think we're, very blessed to have developments like this in our city.
Excellent comments. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the developer?
Gary, this is Brian Johnson, if I could.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Michael, for the presentation. It's Brian Johnson. I'm not only an alderman for the city of Green Bay, but the executive director for On Broadway, and of course, this building being located in the Broadway district. So, I kudos to you and your team. I think when you look at, general urban design theory, I mean, you've hit just about every checkbox that we could ask you to hit. And I really, I like the patio space along Broadway. That is something that is currently missing. I appreciate your the parking analysis, because that is, every Main Street director across the country, that is one thing that they always struggle with, is everybody talks about a shortage of parking when in reality it's typically not what's really at play. And so I would love to talk with you about that offline in terms of the way that you've evaluated that. The breezeway, I don't think, can be understated. That is, he hit it on the head there. And these are comments more towards the RDA. That is one of the biggest obstacles you oftentimes see when you're putting in big buildings like this in urban areas. And I can see that breezeway actually being quite a unique amenity, incorporating some LED lighting or public art components. So I think that was a really important attribute to help ensure a project that flows well. One thing, Michael, that I would encourage you to do is the On Broadway Design Committee does a lot in terms of overall streetscape design for the district as a whole. We'd love to have our design committee talk with your team about how to incorporate some of those elements into your project. I'd like the way that you've embraced public art and you've incorporated it into your project, and you're looking to engage local as well as national artists. I think that's a really important piece of what we try to do here in the district. So overall, I am actually, and I don't always say this, you hit a home run here. I think the elements of this project just hit every box for me. The one question, though, that I would ask, if you could elaborate on a little bit, is talk about how this project connects to the neighboring building or doesn't connect. I couldn't quite, make head of the way that lays out there. So, Kevin, if you're able to put down the blueprint, the top down, perhaps, so they could see again how it connects to the existing warehouse building that's in that area.
Yeah, Brian, thank you. I'll send you an email about that right after this, and definitely connect about that. I would say, generally speaking, there is not a really strong connection because of kind of the characteristic of, I think it's Building R is the code name that's used internally. And I believe there's a raised concrete patio that is actually immediately south of that existing building. And so because of that significant grade change, we really didn't have a strong option to really engage it in any way. And then there's also, there are some transformers and things like that where we just had to put them somewhere. There's only so much on the site. So you can see that there is a beneath grade parking ramp that connects from our garage down into their subgrade parking. And then a network of sidewalks that kind of goes over that and connects the two areas. But in terms of function or use, there honestly is not a super strong connection at the moment. And I think that's partially because that building to some degree is still fluid and is still being, kind of figuring out how it's going to end up in terms of use.
Land section that is immediately adjacent to Broadway Street between your building and building R. Yep, the one that Kevin's circling there. Do we envision that? First off, I guess who continues to own the rights to that piece of property? Is it you or is it DDL Holdings? And then secondly, do we envision any type of utilization on that particular space in front of those transformers?
Yes. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yes. That space. I thought you were referring more connection to the other building, but that will be only a green space until we have a tenant for the adjacent. And the idea is that that adjacent tenant would ideally be somebody who could use additional extensive patio space, and that could be built out as an outdoor patio space there. But it's as kind of initially it's left as green space because it's on the north face, and we kind of want to reserve that for any kind of potential retail tenant that might want to use that.
Okay, and so then that property is owned by you then?
Yes, I believe our property line essentially goes up to the actual structure. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the clarification. Great job.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the developer, for Michael? If not,
the only thing
yes, please.
I would just like to add, I believe Kevin and I talked extensively about this, but I'm not sure it's been brought up to the RDA yet. Actually proposed the project. It was intended to be a kind of workforce housing project that was near market rate essentially. And so we talked about how that the majority of the units essentially had market rate rent, but there was some affordability levels built into it. Unfortunately, that was enabled by a specific lending program facilitated by Freddie Mac, and it has proven to be so incredibly popular that it was instantly oversubscribed, and we did not make the cut to get into that particular loan program. Thankfully, we've been able to make pretty minor adjustments and convert it to a purely market rate development. And it still works, and we're still moving forward, and we're extremely thankful for that. But we were really looking forward to the opportunity of bringing more income diversity and more affordable housing and workforce housing to this area. We are still providing that with Broadway Lofts, but this now is a purely market rate development. The silver lining, I would say, is with that, we did a full new market analysis and market study from a third-party expert, and they found and they affirmed our identification of extremely strong multifamily demand and observed that essentially, I believe there is not a single market rate apartment available in downtown Green Bay right now. That's not my claim. I can send you the report. And there are some being built closer to, further to the south, closer to the stadium, and obviously some other areas. But in terms of walkable CBD Green Bay, there's not a single apartment.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think along those lines, there's been some adjustments, I think, reflected in the budget. Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the original plan had somewhere between 10, maybe 20% of the units were at that like 80 to 120. You were kind of looking to make that transition between Broadway Lofts and a full market rate piece. So, in terms of the change, I think it's impacting a small portion, of the units. With that, I think two things. One, just all the more important for Broadway Lofts and for us to continue, some pieces, which I think, we're going to continue to talk about housing and affordable units. I think for this unit, it will probably assess out higher than our original projections, if those rents continue to increase. With that, overall, it still fits in, kind of the portfolio in terms of rents are looking for. And so just, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Michael. I think that's something that was kind of unknown until, we really went through and, decisions were made in terms of the financing piece. But it's something that, just as the market changes, we will adjust.
All right. Any other questions or comments for the developer? If not, motion to get back to regular order of business.
Move to return to regular order.
Alder
Dorf.
Second, Schuler.
Second, Schuler. Motion and a second to go back to regular order of business. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Well, one quick comment. Melody, I really appreciate your comments, and Brian Johnson as well. That gives us assurance. Your comments are very, very powerful. So I entertain a motion.
Move to approve by Dorf.
Dorf?
Second by Henkes.
Okay, motion to approve by Alder Dorf, second by Kathy. Any other comments or questions? If not, we shall vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. Thank you. Excellent presentation, Michael. Great job. Keep up the good work and good luck. Agenda item number 4, consideration of possible action on consent to assignment of the management agreement for the Green Bay Convention Center and Conference Center. Who's got this?
That would be me, Kevin. So included in your packet, you may be familiar, we own some property called KI Convention Center. We have a management agreement with the adjacent property owner, Hyatt, which is owned by Hyatt Corporate, to manage that convention center. And so there's agreement, and then they manage it, and there's some payments made to the city for that. Has requested to assign that management agreement to another entity. Hyatt Corporate would like to create a new LLC, which will be a wholly owned subsidiary of Hyatt Corporate. And with that, they would like to transfer the management agreement obligations to that new LLC. They've also made a request, and that was, I believe, approved through Improvement Services Committee for a parking agreement that we also have to do the same, to assign that to the LLC. The original agreement, it's not quite clear in terms of how that consent can be granted. Mostly in our development agreements now, if as long as it's a wholly owned subsidiary of the parent company, they actually can just do that without consent. But because it's not clear in this agreement, Attorney Chavez advised us that it would be best to go through and get formal approvals on this. So we are asking for your approval, and then this will go to City Council next week for their approval. This will not have any implications in terms of change on operations and how they're doing things. I think they are looking just, overall corporate and how they are operating, and would rather, put these entities into separate LLCs and not be owned by corporate as a whole. But because it's still a wholly owned subsidiary, we believe that recommendation of approval is warranted.
Blumreich, so moved.
Second.
A motion
Dorf.
by Jim and a second by Alder Dorf. Any other questions or comments in regards to the motion? If not, we shall vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Number 5, consideration of possible action on communications from Alder Johnson. By the way, Brian, congratulations. Well deserved. I'm very happy you won personally, but I shouldn't get into that. But congratulations. But anyway, the creation of emergency relief fund to provide loans to assist small business owners with the impacts of coronavirus COVID-19. I think you brought this up last meeting, too.
So a few things. I think Commissioner Schuler provided a little insight into what actions were taken yesterday at the loan committee. We also have Ms. Townsend on, who can talk a little bit more about how we intend on using that fund. Then I think now would be the appropriate time. We'll let Ms. Townsend speak just about what we have done. And I think Alder Johnson would also like to speak on maybe some in the future, just to make sure, we're being as comprehensive as we can in terms of addressing some of the needs that are out there. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Townsend first and then Alder Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. As we found out yesterday, the Revolving Loan Fund Committee, which I appreciate everybody that took the time out to kind of work through that process and created a small business pandemic relief program. We are taking $100,000 from our Community Development Block Grant Fund and creating this particular program. With this program, it has some of the HUD guidelines and strings that would be with that program, and then maybe limiting to some of our businesses and may even have a little bit of a delay in some of the processing. So we're trying to be efficient, we're trying to be sensitive, and we're trying to make things available to businesses that are really useful. And I think Brian has some ideas about maybe some other programs that we can implement. And so that's really where we went yesterday and where we're looking to go with this new program that he's proposing.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah. So first off, I just thank the Revolving Loan Fund Committee, of which I'm a member as well, for reallocating the $100,000 of HUD funds that we had. I think that's a good first step. As Wendy had alluded to, though, it comes with a lot of the federal government restrictions, including the job retention, job creation requirements, which oftentimes don't serve small businesses very well, particularly those that might be sole proprietorships. So right. I think with this particular program, we've kind of talked about how with that fund could sort of be the COVID-19 immediate response, but then there's sort of that recovery period that we're going to have to start to talk about that as our economy starts to emerge from this. And what are the gaps that we can fill locally? The federal government obviously continues to come out with programs. They're planning another round here in the near future. And so I don't think we need to replace what the federal government is doing. The idea is that, again, we fill gaps that aren't being met by federal and state agencies. One of the things that we've taken a look at is the utilization of the Wisconsin Trust Fund. We've used that fund prior for neighborhood enhancements. It allows to get access to capital. That's almost what I would call strings free, meaning it doesn't come with a lot of the requirements that the federal funding does with dollars. And so it would allow us locally to have a little bit more latitude in terms of determining program parameters that can best service our community and not necessarily, what a particular fund might dictate. There's certainly some risk that might come with that. In the case of neighborhood enhancement funds, though, we still take those out as catalytic investments for certain neighborhoods without any expectation that funding would get repaid or restored. And so I think this fund could be viewed the same, and except that obviously a big chunk of it, if it were loan, it would get repaid. If it's, but at least if we take it out, we have the ability with this particular fund set to consider a balance of loans versus grants. And again, programs that can help meet the needs of certain gaps. So my recommendation today, at least, recognizing that we'd be looking at this more of a recovery thing, is that we would refer this to staff to kind of explore what that looks like. I think one is determining what's an appropriate amount. How can we pull that out in phases, perhaps, so that way we don't, for the sake of using round numbers, I wouldn't want to see us take out $1 million loan and then, of course, pull that out and not have any of it go out the door, and now we're paying interest on it. So it'd be good to know if we can pull that out in phases. Whatever that recommended amount is, I think it's good to have some time to obviously work with staff in our small business community to determine what programs are in need and going to be in demand. So again, I'd be comfortable with referral to staff, just having the committee recognize that if we are going to leverage the Wisconsin Trust Fund, it does require approval by 2 successive council meetings as well. So just kind of keep that in your mind when you're thinking about what the timeline on leveraging this account looks like.
Brian, do you see the overnight being done by the revolving loan committee as well?
Yeah, I think it could be.
Matt?
That committee obviously has representatives from the EDA, from the RDA.
Yes.
So you've got a strong cross section there. People
Yes.
that are experienced in handling these types of loans. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Matt, any comments? Any thoughts?
Give me a second there to unmute. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think in general, it's going to depend on the amount of funding and what we want to, how we want to think about it in overall from a, hey, what's the risk that the city is willing to take with that funding? Because I think this could get us into situations that are very risky on repayment of funds. And we're going to have to think about that as we create this funding. And I think whatever group is responsible is going to need to understand what that tolerance is before it goes into approving or not approving loans.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and I would echo that sentiment. And I think that there are some calculations that our finance department could do, that kind of looks at, okay, what default rate could we withstand before we get into an upside down situation? And of course, there's that risk tolerance discussion about how far are we willing to go upside down, recognizing the catalytic investment that we are making into the community. And just one other thing that I'd mention too is that it was confirmed with us from the state that not only is this illegal and an allowable use, but it is a use that many communities across already use the fund for this specific purpose. So if in fact the committee does recommend referral to staff, I think it would be worthwhile to talk with those other communities that currently use the Wisconsin Trust Fund for this purpose to determine how they currently leverage it.
I'm going to entertain a motion in a second here, probably to refer staff. But Deanna, do you have a thought on this at all?
Yes, as Brian had said, I reached out to the Board of Commission, and they said, yes, absolutely, this is a public purpose and it can be used for that. And other municipalities do, whatever interest rate we pay, that they typically will do an uptick to help cover some administrative costs. This is more flexible. It really, we can borrow it. Whatever we borrow, as Alder Johnson said, it does have to get one, you have to get permission to apply for the loan, and then second, you have to have permission to accept but that is timely meetings. What happens is no matter what dollar amount you choose to take out, you have up to 4 months to pull the dollars. And at that point, if you don't pull it, then your application, you can even pull a portion of it. And if you don't pull the full amount that you applied for, it just goes away and you have to reapply for more money. The advantage and the flexibility within a state trust fund loan is 9 months of the year, you can pay back a loan at any point. So let's say you pull, $500,000 or $200,000, and we decide we only need half of it. Once we decide we no longer want to do that, there's a window, I think from October to December, that you can't pay it back. But if we decide in September we're not going to need it all, you can pay it back. So you pay that real small interest you had for the few months that you had the money. So I will just caution, same thing that Mr. Schuler had said is, we've been trying, the city's been trying to get out of being a bank and not loan it to other people. So that is a concern I have, because if they can't get a loan somewhere else, it might be a risky loan.
Okay.
Well, that was going to be my next question is, there's so much coming down from the federal government. There's things coming from the state government. Now we're at the local government. Is it assumed that this money would be doled out to the people that fell through those cracks? And do they go through?
Yeah, so this is Director Bonk. I think that's one of the things that we've really been cognizant about. And, it's this balance versus timeliness versus like appropriateness. Mm-hmm. And that is, we want to be there to help our businesses because, there may be some real things with, true cash flow right now. And I think the program that we've got in place right now is to help with that. But to kind of, analyze the situation, we'll have some emergency block grant money coming through. And really, right now, just trying to get our arms around what's in that federal stimulus package and feel that our, appropriate spot as a city is to fit those individuals, those businesses that do fall through the cracks. And especially ones that right now we're most impacted, primarily food, beverage, entertainment, the retail that involves, walk in, walk up kind of things, those that really feel the most impacts. And so trying to balance that with, all right, finding out just exactly, where are the gaps and who's falling through the cracks. And, from a demand perspective, what is the demand going to be? I think, in terms of not really knowing that dollar amount right now, if we can get this initial program up and rolling and get a sense of, okay, how quickly is that money going to go, out the door? Seeing what De Pere is doing, or some of our neighboring communities, what's really the demand for it. I really do like the fact, that the state trust fund has some flexibility in it, right? That if we don't draw it, use it. And so I think, just, getting a sense of, I think, motion to refer to staff and come back in May, to align this maybe with how we may want to spend some emergency block grant dollars. I just really want to look at things comprehensively. And then I think also long term, if we draw some of the state trust fund money, what's the immediate use for it? But also, if things stretch out a little bit further, are there some other uses that we can have? I don't want to have money that we've drawn and now can't lend out to somebody else because it's restricted on what we can do. So just being able to draw the appropriate amount, I think, is really important. And then on the flip side, when we lend, I think what we're doing right now, the loans are quite small, that we're hedging our bets and we're not putting a lot of money into any one business. And that, for some, they're maybe taking a more calculated risk because, look, it is riskier, food, beverage, entertainment, those types of things. But if we're doing it in a way that, they're smaller loans, really to kind of, again, help with this gap funding here, I think it's really good that most all of our loans, and Wendy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, unless people have put cash in the bank, almost all of our business partners that we work with also work with a financial institution. And so that gives me some comfort in saying, like, look, there's somebody else, going through and vetting, the financials and vetting, doing a risk analysis on this, that we can say, right, every investment, it's never 100%, but at least, it can be 80, 90% sure that this is going to work out.
So comments, please.
Alder Dorf, please.
Thank you. I think this is a very supportive and appropriate step to take. It's good to refer it to staff, and I'm so glad that we as a city are looking at something like this to help the small businesses in our city, especially those who might be falling through the cracks of the various other programs that were mentioned. So I'm very supportive at having staff look at this. Do you need a motion, Gary?
Yes.
Before we do,
Jim, please.
I have a number of comments. The first of which is time is of the essence. And so I don't know that we need to wait until the May meeting to take action on this, so long as staff has got the time to appropriately put all the parameters together that we're looking for. And to that point, Wendy at the Revolving Loan Fund Committee had a draft of guidelines for us, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And those guidelines incorporated what other communities were doing and also included kind of a grading scale that would be used to qualify the request for the loan money. So to me, those are important things. So to the extent that staff can act fast to actually put something like this together, I think it's very appropriate given the timing. The one concern I would have is the state trust fund loan used to not be very flexible at all once the money was borrowed. And so I think we have, if it's still that way, we have to be very careful about our drawdowns.
Okay, I think right now just entertain a motion to refer to staff and flush this out a little better.
I'll make a motion that we refer it to staff.
I would second.
Motion by Kathy, second by Jim. For comments?
Just that as long as we're covering those that are falling through the cracks, those businesses that aren't eligible, because that's my big worry is that we get people in Green Bay that are going to fall through the cracks and they're not going to be able to reopen again. So thanks, Brian.
Okay.
And just, this is Kevin, so it doesn't fall into the Abyss, would you like this to come back in May with maybe a full, kind of proposal that's ready to go in terms of how we'd outline this and maybe some parameters on things? Just, I want to have a deadline to come back,
Right.
at the May meeting, or again, if not potentially sooner, to address Mr. Blumrich's concerns about timeliness. If we need to have a special one to get this through and get through the channels to make sure,
Yes.
if trust fund is going to take 2 readings at council to do it, just so as soon as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, as soon as possible, and if necessary, we'll pull together a special meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, motion and a second to refer to staff. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Excellent comments by everybody. Number 6, consideration of possible action and communication from Alder Johnson, District 9, to direct the Redevelopment Authority to initiate negotiations to purchase 927 Liberty Avenue utilizing neighborhood enhancement funds, block grant, or other funding resources available to the City of Green Bay or RDA. Is this just going to be another one refer to staff? I would imagine.
No, so this one, we discussed a little bit at staff, and really feel, based on that, it's probably more appropriate in terms of the negotiations, to talk about this in closed session.
Okay.
So I would ask that somebody make a motion, read the language, and can kind of discuss our strategy in closed session on this.
Okay.
Going to closed session?
Alder Dorf?
I know. Do I need to wait for a second to read the language?
Second, please.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Jim Blumrich, second. Alder Dorf, you can do the reading if you don't mind.
Sure. The authority may convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.85 sub 1 sub E Wisconsin statutes for the purposes of deliberating or negotiating the sale of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business as necessary for competitive or bargaining reasons. The authority may thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.85 sub 2 Wisconsin statutes to report the results of the closed session and consider the balance of the agenda.
Roll call, please.
All right. Chair Gary Delvaux.
Yes.
Vice Chair Matt Schuler.
Yes.
Alderperson Barbara Dorf.
Yes.
Jim Blumrich.
Yes.
Debbie Dean.
Yes.
Kathy Hinkfus.
Yes.
And Melanie Parma.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to get everybody back in so I can get on the record.
Okay.
So let me get the participants and everybody in the waiting room in. Give me 1 second. All right, and then all right, so back in open session, Chair Gary Delvaux.
Yes.
Vice Chair Matt Schuler.
Here.
Alderperson Barbara Dorf.
Here.
Jim Blumrich.
Yes.
Debbie Dean.
Yep.
Kathy Hinkfus.
Yes.
Melanie Parma.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to entertain a motion based on discussion in closed session.
To move to refer to staff and have staff come back as directed in closed session.
I'll second that.
Second, Kathy. Motion by Alder Dorf and second by Kathy. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Excellent. Thank you. Number 7, consideration from Alder Worry, District 8, on request to purchase or remove 1077 and 1079 Shawano Avenue. Who's got that?
It'll be Cheryl.
So these are 2 properties that are located next to Lincoln School, and we've had conversations with the district. They actually may have an interest in working with us on purchasing these, but we're not ready to come to the RDA with a recommendation at this point. So
Okay.
we would just like you to refer this. We'll bring it back in May. if we have a deal that we can put together.
Okay.
Motion refer to staff. Debbie.
Motion, refer to staff.
And second by
Second, Alderdorf.
Alderdorf. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carried. All right, number 8, consideration of possible commercial facade improvement grant funds to Paul D. Jacob for enhancements to 715 South Broadway, tax parcel 2-100.
All right, this will be Matt Buchanan, so I'm just going to grab up a slide for him and turn it over to him.
All right, perfect. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so here we are. This is 715 South Broadway. You might know it as Rum Runners. This is really right in the heart of our shipyard reinvestment area on South Broadway. The owner has applied for our facade grant program. They really plan to completely reface that first floor facade, the storefront area. To match what they believe is the building's original design, they plan to windows, also some decorative paneling and stained glass. They're also planning to repaint that dome with some new copper paint and repaint the south-facing wall. There's a total eligible project, $3,312. Our design review team has reviewed the application. We feel it's a really strong project. We find that this is really a gem of a building in our shipyard area, and the proposed project would really spruce it up quite nice. So recommending approval, contingent upon the environmental review process. We're still in the middle of that, but we anticipate that wrapping up here soon. But once that is complete, approval of a grant, $14,337.
You know, just an aside, I would say we have
A rum barrel, huh?
That was good, Jim.
That was good. Yeah. Anyway, it meets all the criteria, right?
Right.
And you're recommending approval?
Yes, we're recommending approval.
I'd make the motion then to grant approval for the facade grant.
Second.
And second by Debbie, and motion by Matt to approve the grant. Second by Debbie. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Good.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks.
Thank you.
Number 9, consideration possible action to authorize a request for proposal RFP for a home improvement loan program, HILP.
All right, that will be Ms. Renier-Wig.
So that is me. So this request for proposals is actually initiated because we are losing one of our staff persons to retirement, Kevin King. Kevin, put your video on, man, so people can see it.
When's the party?
So, yeah, hopefully we'll be able to have one. Kevin's, I think, planning on leaving in June, retiring in June. So this presents us with the ability to potentially, let me back up. So we have 2 neighborhood development specialist positions. One Kevin holds, which is a rehab-based position, and then one that, if you remember, Billy Joe Horson's held, which was more of a broader-based neighborhood position. So if we can find a contractor who can administer this home rehab loan program, then that would give us the ability to fill the other vacant position, which would allow us to do more broader-based activities, which would include affordable housing work and work with homelessness. So we're trying to find out if there's an interested party for this. I know NeighborWorks has done this in the past. There have been other agencies that have done this rehab loan program. So we would like the ability just to send this RFP out to see if we can get anyone interested and bring this back to the RDA in May if we have a successful candidate.
All right. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Recommendation? Go ahead.
So I'll make a motion to authorize the RFP for the home improvement loan program.
Motion by Melody.
I'll second.
A second by Kathy. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the RFP, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Number 10, consideration with possible action on a development agreement with Lemens Quality Homes for the property located at 827 9th Street, tax parcel 1-950 under the new homes in your neighborhood program.
That'd be Mr. Ravinsky.
All right. Yeah, that's me, Ken here. So Lemens Quality Homes, they've been working on a few properties for the Redevelopment Authority now through the New Homes in Your Neighborhood program.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just switched cameras and a new microphone, so.
No, you're good.
Okay, perfect. The Lemens, they have built and sold 2 properties, one on 929 North Broadway and 1227 South Greenwood Avenue, which that one's actually right around the corner from this property. They have one other new build on Greenwood that is also, they just recently listed it and had some inquiries on it. They're hoping to close on that one soon as well. So also 520 Hubbard Street, we're familiar with that one.
Yes.
They're building over there as well. This property, 827 9th Street, we purchased from the Brown County Treasurer as a tax foreclosure. It was a vacant lot when we purchased it. Lemens Quality Homes, they're looking at doing a build that they did both on Broadway and Greenwood. They have improved the curb appeal as far as making it a little bit more appealing on the side because this is a corner lot. So they have taken one of our existing plans, added some modifications to it just to make it pop a little bit more from the corner there. We are going to be working with them on the zoning. We have for a CUP. This is zoned R3, but the entire block face there actually has either single family or duplex, upper lower units. So a single family home would fit here. We've worked with zoning administrator Paul Newmeyer to make sure that this would be a good fit. And he was supportive of that, and we're going forward with the CUP. Other than that, I guess staff is recommending going forward with a development agreement with Lemens and the use of the $25,000 of neighborhood enhancement to fund the project.
Okay. We've used Lemens several times in the past, if I remember correctly. The ones I've seen, they did quality work. You've been quite happy with them?
Yes, yeah, they've been able to make the program work for them. Their work is nothing but quality. They're doing all the right things and making it work for us and themselves. So I'm hoping they can continue that and we can get all of our lots moved here. This is just another one that we can, get off our plate and put another exceptional home back on the tax roll.
Tax rolls, absolutely. Okay, questions or comments?
My only comment is, how in the world are they able to build a new build for $145,000? Because nobody else can seem to wrap their heads around that.
Yes. So their construction costs are, they're putting in $160,000 of their own funds.
Okay.
And I know on some of the other one, the grant money is really what makes this possible.
Right.
They do also, so they're a family business. The owner and his wife run the company, and their 2 sons actually work for them. So they do a lot of the labor. They're doing the staining of the doors. So their sons are out there with the excavator, moving dirt around, doing framing, doing finished carpentry. So there's some things that other builders might have to sub out that they have to. So their overhead costs there come down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, they're making it work. So I'm hoping
That's
they can.
crazy. That's great.
It's amazing. And beautiful work. I read the ones I walked through before the open houses. Beautiful work to do.
Yeah. They actually, so they used well, they've been using all of our designs, but one that hadn't been built before, our Lark design, that's the one that's for sale right now on Greenwood. That's had some pretty positive showings.
Yes.
But they have a good idea of what fits a neighborhood. They've done their research. They're great to work with.
Question on the neighborhood enhancement fund. And I could be wrong about this, but if the house is sold, doesn't the loan have to get paid back?
No. So it's actually a grant. It comes at the start of construction. It goes as a soft second mortgage against the property. Once the developer or contractor is finished with the project and they get an occupancy permit, that grant actually gets satisfied, and it is a true grant. So there is no repayment.
And the grant's for $25,000, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, that's awesome.
Kathy, it sounds like you're going to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Kathy, second by Jim. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Number 11, consideration of possible action on abatement and demolition contract, RFP 3228.
All right, that's also me, Ken.
Ken.
So as you know, a lot of the work that we do in our neighborhoods usually involves some kind of demolition. A lot of the properties that we're purchasing are properties that require demolition. We also, our department handles tearing down houses for the city. If there are any nuisance abatement or inspection properties that need to be demolished. In the past, what we've done, basically we pool a number of properties together, put out an RFQ, and have demo contractors bid on getting those projects, usually as a lump sum. With that, typically that process takes anywhere from to get all the houses, ready to go. In the past, we've also handled all of the environmental testing, and that's a process that we have to initiate. Once we get those results back, then that's when we can actually start the RFP process. With this contract, to do is hire one demo contractor we have it set up as a 3-year term with the additional options to extend that for 2-year periods after that. What this would do is help us speed up that process. So when an inspection demo comes through, or if the RDA purchases a property, we can send an email, make a phone call, and tell our demo contractor, hey, we need this house taken down, please start the process. And then it can go right into their queue and be taken care of quicker. So they speed up and help us just be a little bit more efficient with getting these demos taken care of. And more, a lot of the times we call them attractive nuisances. These properties, as they sit, the people can see that they're abandoned. It's not good for the neighborhood to have these properties sitting for this longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So this contract would just help us speed up that process. We've worked with our purchasing department to put this RFP out. We had 4 qualified bidders, and Best Enterprises Inc. in our scoring. And staff would be recommending going forward with a 3-year contract with Best Enterprises Inc. For the demolition or abatement and demolition contract.
So Ken, I'm just curious, how do they come up with their cost
that they submitted on their bids?
Yes. So as part of the RFP, we put together some parameters of what we were looking for as far as looking at like tipping fees, mobilization fees. And so we put together a list that they bid on. So at the same time, we had a group of demolitions that we were looking at as examples, and they used those to also bid on those, and we looked at those prices. Pricing was part of the RFP, but we also looked at, size of the company, experience of the company, number of employees, how much equipment they have, whether or not we've had any issues with them in the past. We've worked with a number of different demolition contractors over the years. Myself running the demo program, Kevin King, he was in on the initial when we put this RFP together. Bill Pappy, who's also on this call right now, was part of that. He actually manages all of our demolitions now. So this definitely helps with his process, speeding up the demolition, that time period. We've put extensive effort into making sure contractor, someone that has worked with the city before. We know that they're a good contractor. They do quality work and in a timely manner.
So what happens if a property is loaded with asbestos?
Yes, so that now, in the past we would have had to get that report back and then go out for bid to have that removed as well. That's all part of this contract now. So the demo contractor would be responsible for that and then invoice the city. So that's something we would have had to pay for anyway in the past. We just don't have to coordinate it anymore with this contract.
Okay, so if Best Enterprises gets this contract, they don't absorb the cost of any environmental remediation then?
Correct. Those fees would come back to the city, and they have in the past as well. Okay. So that would be typical for what we had done. The only thing that changes is that we don't have to do the testing and coordinating of that removal.
Right. Thank you.
So that would also speed up the process. If they're working with multiple vendors, they can pick and choose who they're working with. Their costs, however, in this contract, they set where their costs would be. Now, there are some unknowns there if there is a lot of asbestos or any other, environmental issue that we'll review as that comes up. But the costs are pretty set, and it won't change what the city ends up paying for these. The same if we're doing this contract or if we group them all together and then RFP them at one time.
Yep. Thank you.
I guess that was just my question too. And just so the cost that they included is based on a specific scope of work in the RFP, but there's potential for additional costs based on the actual work that we see over these next 3 years.
Correct. Yeah. And those are all things that we would review as they come up, but we don't anticipate that there should be anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea, obviously, of being able to streamline some things. And obviously, it's difficult to anticipate what's going to happen over the next 3 years. But if, like you said, you can create some parameters now so that you can move through that efficiently, makes sense.
And they have the ability to scale whatever we do?
Absolutely. Yeah. They have been one of our contractors that, has worked really well with the city. And I should mention as part of this RFP, we worked with Department of Public Works. It's a lot of these, all of these jobs involve erosion control. And this contractor has worked well with that department as well. So we are definitely comfortable going forward with this company.
Okay.
I just kind of note that this is just residential properties that will be taking down. So any commercial properties, this RFP doesn't include that, because if it is a larger one, we still have the ability to go out for an RFQ for that. This is just for residential.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve.
Jim?
A second, Melanie.
Melody? Motion by Jim, second by Melody. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Informational. I didn't have any questions with the financial report or check register. I don't know if anybody else did.
Chair,
We got
there's one more item on the amended agenda.
One more.
Oh, I missed it. Sorry. I guess I don't have the minute agenda. Please tell me. I printed this off last.
Sure. So there's one more item, regular business.
Okay.
And that would be consideration of possible action on request to use $480,000 of public service community development block grant funding for potential use with homelessness assistance related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, I did see that online, but the one I printed, I must have printed before they came out. Sorry about that. Okay.
I can speak to that.
Yeah,
so,
please.
Director Vonk and I have actually been involved in a few meetings with emergency management personnel and homeless shelter representatives, just basically talking about a lot of things with regards to, how we work with people that need isolation, how to separate people in the shelters, those types of things. But we believe that there may be a need coming up in the next few weeks for not some bigger items, like finding additional places to house people that may be coming down the line, and we may have to use some of our block grant dollars to do that are coming. But currently we have $40,000 of public service money available today that we could get out into the community for things like food for shelters, sanitation, cleaning, potential extra security work. Right now we've got, for example, St. John's Shelter is working their staff like 24/7, and some of them are quarantined. So, it's a stressful time for people that are helping people in shelters. So staff would just like the ability to use this $40,000 allocation for assisting our existing shelters in Green Bay for those kind of lower level needs that may be coming down the line.
Okay. Yes, Barb.
I think that's a great idea. That's an awesome idea. And I think that I certainly trust the judgment of staff, and I feel very comfortable putting it in their hands. Great idea. Thank you for whoever came up with this idea.
I have a question just from a learning perspective.
Yes.
From a homelessness perspective, I think this is the first time we've ever talked about just a block dollar amount. And I'm trying to, is that normal?
Well, the money that I'm referring to is actually money that we have set aside under public service dollars in our block grant. It's not specific for homelessness. It's public services in general.
And we can authorize that.
You can, yes.
Okay,
those are
eligible. Great idea.
Those are eligible expenses, and of course, we'll work with Krista Cisneros, who's our block grant coordinator, to make sure that whatever uses we use are appropriate under the HUD program. But that's our plan.
Well, especially if it's for COVID. Wow.
Correctly.
All right, I'd like to make a motion then, and to approve this use of the $40,000 of public service CDBG block fund, the block fund granting homelessness assistance during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
Second by Matt. Motion made by Allerdorf, second by Matt. Anything else? If not, Jim, did you have anything?
Nope.
Okay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. All right, now we can go to director's report. You've been busy, Kev.
I don't know what you're talking about. Financial report, check register first.
Yeah, no, I mentioned that was fine. At least I didn't have any questions or comments.
Sure. So with that, project updates available if you want to continue discussions about the RDA property disposition plan. I don't know, chime in quickly about that.
Ken?
Yeah, and I do have to apologize. I don't have the list in front of me right now. I can try to pull it up on the previous agenda. Were you all able to access that? RDA members?
Was it on the...
It was a while ago.
Yeah, that was last meeting, right? It was the attachment from last meeting?
It should have been, yeah. Otherwise, I can email it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, we're into 2 hours of this. I think we'll cover it in May, but unless you want some highlight comments you want to make about it, but let's go in detail in the May meeting if you don't mind.
Okay. I mean, I think the main thing right now is, you can see we have another New Homes in Your Neighborhood program, property going back. We've been moving some properties. We're still working on developing a passive stormwater management program for some of our floodplain properties. I'm hoping we can roll that out mid to late summer. That some of the things we're working on, we have some more RFPs that'll be going out, some updated RFPs on some of our larger sites. So I'll email that list to everyone. And, if you have any questions, you want to email me directly. Otherwise, yeah, we'll circle back at the next RDA meeting.
Good. Let's do it. Excellent. Kevin.
Yes. Also on there, on Broadway Inc. SAS. Won't be any SAS till next year. I don't know. Alder Johnson can lay anything towards that.
Yeah, I mean, just obviously with everything going on, the funding source that we had identified for that just was not going to be able to materialize. So we've decided to postpone the event rather than trying to force something through prematurely. So. Okay.
The housing study, Kevin.
Yes. So that has been going quite well. Assistant Director really the charge on that. We've had the survey out. We have over 850 responses. It was just translated into Spanish this past week. So we're going to keep it open for another week. Just really making sure, we had all members of our community. The only thing really we have to figure out yet is just some meetings for focus groups. Initially, we're going to be having those right now in person. So we may have to do those. But at least the survey will give us a lot of data to work with. And again, I think we're on pretty good track to have some findings back on that later this summer.
Mm-hmm. So far, your involvement with the consultant, you're satisfied with what they're doing?
Very much so. Yes. Yeah. They're doing very well. And please, we looked at some of the other work that they did and they're going to be very thorough and I think really provide what we need.
Associate Bank, you're going to have to say to the rest of the group, what's happening in Associate Bank parking lot?
Sure. So I'm due to touch base, with Mr. Mackham and Gorman, with that, and just think some of our other major development projects, we really don't anticipate any slowdowns in things, as of yet, most of them, involving housing, the market hasn't shifted too much yet. And so really have not had from that project or other projects, any delay in action. In terms of some of the financing piece, I know initially they were going to look at some LIHTC tax credits. There's some technical things that we had some, I think, disagreement with WIDA on. So they're going to be in the cycle for next year, but they also have some other alternative that they're exploring right now. It was always contemplated that this project wouldn't break ground until next year, and they still feel confident in keeping that on track. In addition, the grocery store is still very interested in getting up into this market.
Yes.
So everything's, still moving with that. Is just, as things shift, some other priorities. But we, continue to move ahead with that. I think another piece just to update two things. Follow up with Merge based on those conversations. We'll get working on the development agreement based on some of the comments that were brought about here. Connecting them with our consultant really to work on some of the technical stuff. Hopefully, if water holds off, we can start doing some of the filling and grading, resuming some of that, in the next few weeks. We actually have some success. It looks like we're going to be able to take some of the excess dirt at the rail yard at the shipyard. There might be a few more dollars involved with that, for the shipyard project, but we may be able to reallocate or do some of those costs overall, back to the rail yard. And I guess overall, what I wanted to say, they'll be to like haul dirt away and then haul dirt in separately.
Great.
So I think, kudos to to Matt Buchanan and our consultant for, figuring out how we can make that work. But you should see some work on there in terms of the filling and grading. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll probably be coming back in the next month or two, some updates in terms of how we're going to proceed with our piece on the southern end of that.
I don't know if there's anything from a confidentiality point of view, but with Breakthrough Fuels, is there anything you can tell us without breaking confidentialities?
Sure. So yeah, we talked about, since they moved on from the shipyard site. I think we're working with them on the city site. They've looked at a few places. I think they're making really good progress, and very hopeful within the next month or two that we could have an agreement to come back here. But I think things will looking up in the city here.
Boy, that's great. Mm-hmm. Excellent job, like always, to the whole group. Motion to adjourn.
Hey, Gary, can I say, I just want to compliment the group. This has been the best meeting I've had for any public entity meeting. Everybody's either got their earbuds on or have their speakers toned to the right. The presentation, I think, went very well.
Absolutely.
So I have the benefit of having two laptops here, which actually, I wouldn't have the room at the table up in Harry's conference room. So I think this is pretty slick. We need to learn from this for the future. So.
Excellent.
Just a quick follow up on that. Thank you. We all will be learning next time. First, thanks to Shelby and NIT for getting us hooked up and running things in the background. The city is going to be transitioning over to GoToMeeting for its future public meetings. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad everybody learned this system. We'll have an opportunity to learn a new system in the upcoming weeks. So, this quarantine is a learning experience for all of us. So we'll be able to have another tool in our pocket coming up. So yeah, again, I just appreciate everyone, meeting room etiquette, everything with that. This has been really good. Again, I really appreciate, taking the time to do this and just making sure we can do our part to keep moving, city things forward.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by, second by.
Second.
Alderdorf. I think somebody, all in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Excellent job, everybody. Kev, great job.